grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
Anyway, that leads me to Apple. Apple not being at CES. I've seen Samsung clear TVs, these micro LEDs where like the TV can be a clear pass-through. So like the TV can literally like disappear on the wall.
I mean, it's a transparent screen only.
But it can also show a movie.
Huh.
I'll find it. I'll find the link. Bless you.
I mean, I believe that because, I mean, honestly, these guys, they've been making CES a couple of years ago was like the most egregious misuse of screen technology. We got the clamshell phones from Samsung, but then like open out flat. They're kind of funky. But then like, oh, wait a second. No, they're supposed to be meant to be stayed clamshell because influencers love setting up, you know, selfie
Tripod
dancing, whatever, tripod. And then they're like, well, here's this one where you hit a button. Remember, and then the screen kind of does this, like the back has one of these scissor lifts, and it just rises up out of the floor or out of the ceiling and creates the short throw for the projectors. You can put the projector like right underneath it, kind of keystones it. It was only a matter of time they could do effectively like that transparent liquid paper almost.
Samsung debuts the world's first transparent micro LED screen at CES. There's no word on pricing or when this tech will be available in retail devices. They're calling it transparent micro LED. And it's just interesting to me because it's like this screen disappearing narrative. And then literally the same day, you've got Tim Cook saying, you know, this is ushering in the spatial computing era. And a lot of people, I think it will take 10 years to detach this device from our hands, but you eventually, and people have sort of dreamed about this for a while, everything around you will be the interface. Everything around you is the UI, the real world that you can augment. You don't need the screen, really. You need the screen to disappear when you don't need it, or only show the thing you need it to show, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, these guys, this is not their second or third magic trick. This is many in a long line. When the iPhone first launched, 2007-ish, the talk out of Apple, this is also when Steve Jobs, of course, was alive, was that, yeah, I created the mouse, and now I'm going to make the mouse disappear. And then it's, I didn't create the keyboard, but you don't need a mouse, you don't need a keyboard. And everyone's like, oh, heresy. This guy's not a real, you know, he's not a technologist. Yeah. These guys are artists. These guys are creatives. They're not technologists. Time passes. Now, what we think of a keyboard, like a big, heavy piece of plastic and metal, yeah, don't need that. But the interface, like you said, if it's just the goggles and the screen goes away and the interface goes away, then however you're comfortable inputting information into your system, whether you get to speak it, whether you're looking and blinking and hitting letters on a virtual computer screen that acts like a keyboard. I mean, this is the future. So yeah, Samsung transparent screens, maybe trying to scoop a little bit of the energy because like you just said today, Apple out of nowhere, we were all suspecting like April, remember March, April, end of last year. We're like, hey, predictions for this new year, timing of things happening around the halvening and court trials and whatever, kind of pushing it to that end of Q1, that spring break. And here we are, first episode of the new year, episode 70, season 7, January 8th, 2024, and Apple today, crack, here you go. Cheers to you, by the way. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Apple goes ahead and says, oh, sorry, we're going to go ahead and not only get out the Vision Pro before the halvening, but also the week before Super Bowl Sunday. I wonder what people might be able to look at through these Vision Pro goggles. It's also a week before Chinese New Year. I mean, they really got shit done over the holidays. I'm very impressed.
It is shaping up to be a booming 2024. We have got so much to get to. I'm glad that we started with Apple off the top. I mean, it is just flying through my inbox. It's all over my Twitter feed. All the tech blogs who are supposed to be covering CES are now covering Apple Vision Pro goggles. My wife yesterday was like, did you know you can watch the Taylor Swift commercial inside the MetaQuest? I've been spending a lot of time, actually more time than I have in the past 3 years, in the past, I'd say 3 weeks, inside of the MetaQuest 3. So this is the new VR AR headset. And really that's where it shines, is the AR pass-through on this headset. But, talk about NFL and talk about Taylor Swift and talk about Apple making news. It's all going to come together soon. And I know I'm going to make a giant leap here. But the other big thing we got to get to is this Bitcoin ETF, and markets just absolutely cranking today. So this first full week in January, you kick things off with revolutionary tech, a new era in spatial computing, new clear pass-through transparent micro LED screens from Samsung, and here comes the Bitcoin ETF to now create digital currency. If everything I just described is about this new digital environment that we live in, this digital world, then we need digital money. And here it comes from a institutional banking perspective. You and I have been talking about it. Retail investors, smart ones anyway, have been studying Bitcoin, understanding the dynamics of decentralized currencies and coin mechanics. And here comes, it's wild. I don't know where you want to start with this, but
I think the two kind of dovetail nicely together, because I was joking when I said it earlier. We were kind of catching up before recording today, but it's like the timing of Apple for me is so perfect because in a weird way, if the release of it was going to be in April, maybe I was going to wait to get one. But now that it's February and so early, and I know the halvening is coming, the Bitcoin halvening, which is the moment that Bitcoin will become geometrically more difficult to get and therefore will become more valuable. Well, maybe now with my VisionPro goggles, I can actually see the halvening because
you can be in it.
We can actually be in it and be looking around and see the blocks being formed and sent off. And then suddenly the blocks are being formed either half as big or half as speed and that being sent off. And already, I think in the spirit of visualizing on the Bitcoin blockchain or on the Lightning Network, another article just hit that there are these developers. They call themselves, they started a Ninja Pizza NFT project recently, but they just went and basically uploaded a Super Nintendo emulator onto the Bitcoin blockchain. And so there's now this interest in saying, well, if the internet, we talked about, there was a period of time when the Internet of Things, IoT, was legitimately all anyone would talk about.
Right.
All. Then that kind of led, it stalled out because people at CES couldn't realize, okay, is it going to be my refrigerator telling me it needs more milk? Like, what does the Internet of Things even mean? Does this protect me from like Y3K? Like, what does that even mean? And then people I talked to started losing Internet of Things as a buzzword, and things like deep image harmonization started coming in. And of course, now we all know AI, from DALL-E to Crayon to Midjourney. The idea of harmonizing imagery and video, that's sort of, okay, we know what that is now. So we need this new buzzword, and it's not really AI, right? People refer to Bitcoin and this digital money as the Internet of Value, I would call it. Some call it the Internet of Money. I call it the Internet of Value. And if you believe the Internet of Value is going to be on the blockchain, regardless if it's Bitcoin or not, then yeah, I'm going to put my fiat money or equivalent there because I want to transact in this new metaverse, these new worlds. But also things that I love, yeah, I want to make it a museum. This blockchain is permanent. Let's go put Super Nintendo games I love. I want to put this on there. And so now you talk about that ownership.
Yeah.
We talk about ownership and NFT stuff. So now there's this sense that maybe we can have a shared, Wikipedia will probably end up on a blockchain. All these things that we want to make permanent for future generations to come and discover are going to be put into these blockchains. So for me, Apple coming in early, right at the beginning of the year, barely letting January finish, hitting everybody over the head with Vision Pro. I'm excited because I feel like now the kind of esoteric and difficult to understand new Web3 technologies, AI, blockchain, etc., are going to be much easier to understand if everyone can just see it. And when you see it, then you'll be real. That's so for me, this is the moment. It's about opening your eyes, letting your irises get scanned, and then letting the Internet of Value just come pouring in.
I'm reading the email here that I got 3 hours ago from Apple. The countdown is on. Apple Vision Pro introduces the era of spatial computing. You know, they do not put that in an email. I mean, we've heard this term before, but just think about the declarative statement of that. Apple does not step into this world, this new era, without knowing what it is doing. And the very next line is where digital content blends seamlessly with your physical space. I just think about that digital content, digital money, digital transactions. I know we're blurring here between hardware and a Bitcoin ETF, but I really think that is what you and I have been doing for the last 18 months, pulling all of this stuff apart so that it starts to make sense. And the first week in 2024, it is starting to make a lot of sense that they've got to have these payment rails, the ability to transact in real time. Even if it's in fiat, it's still got to be a real-time payment if I'm now going to be inside of this world, able to immediately look at something, buy it, put it on my avatar, try it on. Didn't I just purchase it? Don't I own that? Doesn't that transaction need to happen instantly, or do I need to wait to pull out my wallet out of my card, go to my computer, type it in? No, those interfaces, even you started to say this, the interfaces with which we transact will continue to morph. I think we talked about this in one of the last episodes. One of the things that is really cumbersome with the MetaQuest that I didn't really think about, but I'm now really hyper aware of, is the handles, the controllers that you have to have in each hand. Now there's some hand tracking, but Apple isn't shipping this thing with any kind of controller. It's not going to have that. So it will be your voice. It will be your eyes. It will be, I mean, what you're looking at, what you're saying, I guess what you're pointing at to interact with. Yes, the timing of all of these things coming together. And it also means that they've got their supply chain in order, that Apple is ready to ship this thing. If they're going to do pre-orders and they're ready to go, that means they've been tooling those factories to get to this point to be able to have such an early launch and to announce it comfortably on the first day of CES.
Yeah, and to announce it comfortably and to again try to rescoop. I mean, it's a game of words, a war of words. You talk about eras, right? Apple talks about eras of spatial computing. You know who else loves eras? Our pal Tay Tay. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world if the Eras tour, the AR version of that movie that everyone ran or saw at the AMC theaters over the summer, or whenever that was, the fall. They're talking about that one more thing about looking at a world, no handheld controller. So no, this isn't MetaQuest 3 where we're working up a massive sweat because we're what do they call it? Blade. What's the game where you're swiping with
Fruit
laser
Ninja?
blades? No, it's a game where you're holding two controllers and there's like things coming at you. It's like a workout, and you're I guess like blade saber or something. Anyway, they have a bunch of games which are really physical, right? You have to move around and you kind of get sweaty and all these things happen. That's something that I think is going to be interesting because now Apple, like you said, coming out, it's not an extension of the Wii or the PlayStation Move. The MetaQuest 3 really came into, or I guess the MetaQuest and now the evolution of the 3, they came into the market really more as a gaming console. I mean, that's how I always viewed it. You have more experience with it, but everything I've ever seen, anyone that's ever shown it to me, everything I've ever done with it is really about some form of gaming. And some of it's cool and others it's just kind of whatever, but it's called Beat Saber, by the way, Beat Saber. But anyway, what Apple's rolling out isn't a gaming console. Like that's actually not at all what they talk about. I mean, they sometimes we talked about in those press conferences and there's different presentations that they would show oh, and by the way, for developers who are working on these advanced engines for 3D rendering, we'll be able to do cool stuff with this Wanderlust, and maybe you'll be able to speak and give prompts to the new AI to help you build code and worlds and everything. But it wasn't the lead. The lead for Facebook and Meta and the Quest have always really been about that video game entertainment. And we heard when the one more thing we know was Bob Iger at the Tim Cook's conference. Well, Bob Iger represents a whole lot of things And that's not just interesting movies or Apple TV content. We're talking sports broadcasts and instant replays. And now, because the world is blurred as to what's a celebrity, what's an athlete, it almost seems like they have a pretty broad content library to draw from. So that to me, again, all that dovetailing and that scooping that narrative before CES starts, we'll have to see how much noise Samsung can make, because really, when it comes to the other hardware guy, if we're not talking about Apple, and if we believe that hardware is your gateway to the metaverse, to these new worlds, then Samsung, who is going to be launching all kinds of updates, like you just said, with the micro transparent LED screens, is also going to announce their interesting integration with Tesla. Samsung and Tesla just made an announcement.
Wow.
They're going to and talk about their Google Pixel phones that they're building for Google. Samsung has now got their fingers in a whole lot of honeypots, and I think they're just diversifying because, look, if you're going up against Apple, you got to try everything, right? You can't just go at them heads on just on the goggles. So this CES, I feel like, is going to be a battlefield, the hardware
Yes.
battlefield.
It will, and I think the thing that'll be interesting coming out of CES is that, you know, everything we've talked about to this point, we're talking about hardware, and we're talking about sort of the use cases of these virtual worlds or the games or a generative AI. But I just wonder how an AI company in and of itself is showing up at something like a CES that is predominantly controlled and just dominated by hardware. It's got to be hard for an AI company that's building an algorithm or that's building a generative model to showcase it in those environments. Kind of maybe a bit of an aside, but we know that there are a lot of companies working on different variations of AI LLMs and different use cases for generative AI. But the hardware where it shows up is going to be inside of these AR, VR, or gaming consoles, or inside of these existing virtual worlds. So it's just interesting to me that, yes, it makes sense. You've long talked about Samsung really doubling down and being this, you know, almost Trojan horse of a hardware player in the metaverse. And that clear screen, that micro LED clear screen, it's up there. It's not going to maybe break through the Apple Vision Pro news, but it is breaking through the headlines. I know we have jumped all over the place, but I'm gonna bring us back to the Bitcoin ETFs, and just you know, I'm saying everything that I'm reading is saying Wednesday, Thursday, saying Wednesday approval. That's the actual 10th date. When I go back and pull the calendar of what the original fourth and final deadline, if you recall, there was the first deadline, a second, a third deadline, and then what was listed as the final deadline. The first one that comes up when I'm looking here is the ARC Bitcoin ETF. And I also, following Eleanor from Fox Business, JMU alum, shout out, she has been crushing it in the past couple of weeks. There was a flurry of S1 filings this morning before 8 a.m. Just everybody piling in. It means they had them in on Friday. Like, you think about it, like these things, you can actually see the date stamps on them. It's like 6:01, 6:02, 6:03 a.m., 6:04 a.m. And there's a flurry of them right up until, so that every single one of them has a before 8 a.m. timestamp on the SEC website for the S1 filings, which is the signal to go public, basically to take this ETF to the public markets, to be assigned a ticker, and to start trading. And everything I'm seeing is saying Wednesday approval, Thursday trading. And then the one cherry on top is Gensler puts out a tweet today, a thread nonetheless, a 3-tweet thread that a lot of people are just trolling him. It's worth going to look at because it's really sad. But it's basically him saying some things to keep in mind. Quote, if you're considering investing in crypto assets. And then he goes on to list like all of the things that you need to still be worried about in terms of, you know, the bad actors and the risks. But why the timing of his tweet today at, like, you know, 2 hours after the deadline, that to me is a very, very, very clear signal that this thing is coming. The institutional money is going to flow in. I'm hearing more and more reports, Grayscale coming in with just huge amounts of cash on the sidelines ready to dump in probably more so even than BlackRock, which I know we've talked a lot about. But final thought, we have made some seriously accurate predictions as we start season 7, episode 70 here. Bitcoin ETF, it is coming.
It is coming, and some of the predictions that I still think might play out, because look, I'm a suspicious reader and parser of the news, as I know you are. We go through all this noise and all this FUD on a week-to-week basis. People often say, buy the rumor, sell the news. And when every article has got some new pundit or some new economist or some new someone saying things like, it's 100% slam dunk. My word is it's going to all be approved on the 10th, and everything's just so milk and honey, just everything's so nice. And even, Gary Gensler, no one officially says anything that's in the affirmative. There's just this really wild swell of conjecture and people all over the internet trying to get more eyeballs by saying crazier and crazier things. You have irresponsible bankers talking about, well, I can see Bitcoin ETF going to $1 million by the end of 2024. It's like, what are you talking about? And I just imagine, the more they put the news out, how does that make you and me feel? Gosh, we feel so secure and so good. I'm going to start getting more Bitcoin. Let's start putting more money in crypto, honey.
FOMO.
Look, it's coming soon. The news says it's go. And now the question for me is, okay, maybe something does, quote unquote, officially get approved on the 10th. Is the door wide open for retail investment, or is the door now only open for institutional investment? Do retailers really have to wait a little bit? Is this a chance for all these guys, these companies from ARK Invest to Grayscale to BlackRock to WisdomTree, who've updated their filings, continually updating their filings and really following BlackRock's lead, because apparently they have enough money and power to be first in to refile, and everyone's looking to see what they did. There's a great parallel here. It's like BlackRock's like the Apple, of ETFs, right? They have the goggles, so they show it, and then everyone goes, "Oh man, we don't have any of that stuff in our goggles. Quick, go revise the goggles." Like Google takes it off the shelf and we gotta fix it. So then everyone else fixes their filing and off it goes again. Everyone's following BlackRock's lead. But what have they changed? They changed a lot of stuff that was making the idea of the Bitcoin ETF a crypto or a Bitcoin or a blockchain product. They started removing language about surveillance partners. Remember, Coinbase is supposed to be the surveillance partner, as if they're like the bastion, the new Fort Knox of the gold standard Bitcoin. Like, we don't need that. Or how about participating parties? We want to update our thing to show that Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan are doing participating parties and this and this. And they say, well, wait a second. You don't need to really say that anymore, because now the bankers are going to provide money to provide liquidity. So fiat can power this Bitcoin ETF. It isn't really a crypto funded thing, actually, as it turns out. And so all these bankers got together, started saying, we don't understand these S1 filings. We don't even know what a surveillance partner is. We're BlackRock. We're just going to strip all that stuff out, and we're going to give you guys a nice, calm pause, because we'll say, hey, don't worry, look at all this money we have. We'll back this thing. And then they go, oh, that's an interesting idea. It isn't actually a crypto product. It's a derivative of one. So let's just use cash. And so they refile. So now, gosh, as the fix in, the bankers rewrote the rules for a crypto ETF. The SEC is complicit in saying this is, yes, the way we want it to be. Get it here by 8 a.m. on Monday, January 8th. They all do. 2 hours later, per their content distribution schedule, Gensler hits his 3-tweet thread, and then more frenzy in the market. Well, I really do wonder if, like they say, on Thursday, suddenly we can go in and buy it. I just don't see it. I really do feel like if something gets approved, it's going to be institution only, and we're still going to have to wait. And again, that March, April for broad adoption, I don't know. When I walk down to Wells Fargo tomorrow or on Friday, are they going to be able to just QR code me to the future? I just do not believe it. So we'll see.
Yeah,
I think a slow start.
I think it's smart for you to be a little bit skeptical. I will call out, there is an article from Fortune, on Fortune's crypto news site, from Jeff Roberts. This is about from earlier today. Bitcoin ETF expected for Wednesday. but some fret about being, quote, rugged by SEC, which I love the use of the Web3 term there. I do think there is that possibility, and I will call out too, of course, not no financial advice, but one of the other things is I was going back through the original Bloomberg Intelligence SEC prospectus filing calendar that we found back in October, or maybe even earlier, when we saw all these original deadlines, and that ARC deadline of the final deadline being January 10th, and that still shows. But then there is a flurry, including the original iShares, Bitwise, Van Eck, the Wisdom Tree, and the BlackRock. All of those are showing March 15th, which was the date you and I were originally talking about. So there is this really interesting pump happening, and maybe all those confiscated Bitcoins. I saw this video. I don't know where this came from, but it looks like again, you have to watch everything now through the AI lens of, is this real or is this fake? But it's a DOJ official. It's going around Twitter right now. If you search DOJ Bitcoin, basically talking about the DOJ's Bitcoin holdings, like almost disclosing. And I don't know if this is new or not, or it's just like remaking the rounds. But the DOJ is saying, quote, they have 120,000 Bitcoin that originally had a basis worth 71 million when they had it. Today, the value of that Bitcoin is $5.4 billion. So I just wonder, if the DOJ is the biggest holder of Bitcoin, the SEC is coming in as the regulator to approve this ETF. What if that video is new, which I don't know. I tried to find the source of it and I couldn't. Why would they choose this point in time to disclose how much Bitcoin and how much it's worth from the DOJ unless they wanted to sell it and then take the cash and, I don't know, maybe go fund a war or two? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, and that's a disclosure. And if they're making a disclosure, then we know the number is bigger because we already know there was 3 billion that was confiscated twice. I don't know if the DOJ ultimately will get that, or if the FBI, or how that all shakes out. This sort of is different than what you and I think of in the movies, right? Where something is seized and then someone comes in and goes, "Hey, Jim, where's the evidence?" "Oh, it's down in the evidence locker. Here's the key." And someone goes down there, maybe, steals a little something. I just don't believe that there's $5.3 billion worth of Bitcoin sitting in some weird, DOJ jail somewhere. So the fact that they're saying that on top of the money they're collecting, the CFTC is getting $3 billion from Binance. There was another, there's still money shaking out from FTX. There's all these people seizing Bitcoin. And maybe just doubling back for a second on, what we talk about with like this, the ETF validating or being required so that there will be a mechanism to transact both cash or value in the new metaverse, these new worlds, is, BlackRock, they have been the ones leading the S1 filing changes. ARK Invest may be in there first for this January 10, but they haven't been the ones who've been really leading the conversation. So you could see a scenario where maybe they don't get approved. Maybe something's wrong with theirs, and then we wait until the 15th. Because if the DOJ's got money and all these guys have massive amounts of Bitcoin, there's going to be this opportunity for them, like you said, to do a dump, to bring the price down, and to accumulate more and more and more this year. When Apple needed to get a savings account product, which they wanted to call staking, right? What did they have to do? Well, they had to rename staking to savings, and they had to go find a really reputable banking brand like Goldman Sachs to make everyone say, "Oh, I understand what this is. This is Goldman Sachs, that bank that I love and know, or these investors," and they're just going to be in this digital place. And now, of course, we know the scuttlebutt that they don't like each other anyway, and they're going to move over to Chase. But even better, Chase is even more retail friendly, right? If I know Chase Bank, I know Apple, oh, they work together, it makes total sense. So in a way, like ARK Invest, what is that? That sounds like some biblical nonsense. I don't even know where they're. They work for the Red Cross? Like, who are these people? I mean, Wisdom Tree? That sounds like after school learning academy, where we're going to do like math homework and whatever. You have all these things which are just not synonymous with banking or anything solid. Now, even BlackRock sounds like a paramilitary organization who funds contractors in Iraq. I know that's Blackwater, but it's got a similar sounding name. But hey, there's a few other guys in there that you've heard of: Fidelity, Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank. So I really don't believe the SEC would be doing themselves a great service by just rolling out the Bitcoin ETF, talking about ARK, or someone named Kathy Wood. They're going to need to come out the way Apple did with the Goldman Sachs or the Chase or the all at once. And if all can't go at once on the 10th, I think it has to go on the 15th. It's all about that narrative and slowly rolling it out. The DOJ is telling you, I got lots of Bitcoin. But what would be nicer for me and you and the retail investors would be if someone besides the DOJ said that, like someone like Wells Fargo. And then I'd say, oh, it's a banking ETF. It's not a mechanism to fund foreign wars. So I think they're having a little bit of an optics issue, and that's what they're trying to correct in this first quarter.
Oof.
So it comes off and it feels really good and doesn't feel like the government is just trying to get you to give them more money for taxes.
Or I think it's good to be skeptical. But the other thing I'll say is we started and even obfuscating our own narrative here between Apple and CES. And if you need to sort of jam something through and not have it kind of be the main story, I don't know. I'm just
There'd
going
be no
to be
reason they'd have to say it. There'd be no reason for them to say it. They're saying it for a reason. The DOJ has no obligation to tell anything.
I don't know if that's a real video. I don't know if it's new. I don't know if it's real. So I don't want to use that unless I could source it. But I'll just say I'll go back to Eleanor. She's been keeping up with all this, and I'm following her on Twitter religiously now because she's got the latest and greatest. But we're now past the official SEC submission deadline. That was 8 a.m. this morning. She's saying all issuers aside from Hashdex had submitted their updated S1s, and she even goes into why Hashdex hadn't done it, which had something to do with, I think they're converting. They had a Bitcoin trust fund, and they want to convert that into the ETF, and maybe that's just taking them down a different process. But it does now have me a little bit skeptical when I go back and I look at that calendar and there's a 2-month chasm between that 110 ARC date and then all the rest of them listed there at 315, which was the date that you and I really felt confident about and maybe I should stick with. But then it makes me feel like, is this just a pump and hold on and there's going to be another dip, right? If the news comes on Thursday and there is no approval, and you will get that downturn, that correction in the market as we're seeing a massive bull run right now, all on speculation that this ETF is going to get approved and all this money is going to flow in. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure that the SEC can maintain its credibility for the next 2 months. I'll go there, which is that this would not. What decision is left to be made? What else do they need? What else do these applications need to have in them? If they've already made it a cash basis, they have to keep the cash equivalent on the books. It's not a crypto. What is the difference then between this and a gold ETF, for example? Like, I just think that it could really screw up the overall credibility of what. And then why would Gensler have put out this tweet? I just really think it's coming this week. So,
well, part of it too, though, could be, again, it's about the availability, right? Like, just saying it's approved is one thing. It's easy. In some ways, that's the easiest thing to say. Or you say it's approved, but this needs to be amended, or it's not approved because this needs to be amended. It's not. I don't think it's that hard for them to buy a couple of months. Especially considering you and I both know that creating news to cover up what's really going on is clearly something that no one has a problem doing in the media as they align themselves with the government. We're talking about two hot wars, which seem like they're only getting hotter. You could see very quickly, like airline disasters notwithstanding the U.S., which seems like it's every other week. There's like planes falling apart in the sky. These are stories about what's going to be going on. What is the possibility of a full-scale land invasion in Gaza? What does that even look like? How many other pirate boats, supported by Iran have to go trying to run out into tankers and get shot down before things really escalate. The DOJ has all this Bitcoin, great articles to throw in there, all these things. So I don't necessarily believe it would be too hard, even if they do on Wednesday say it's approved. I feel like they could also say, and it'll be in this beta period or whatever they're going to use to describe the period. Institutional investors are going to begin using it. We'll begin testing the software and testing the transaction speed and actually giving it some kind of real world stress test, because you and I and the four walls all know that a digital product or project isn't real until you stress test it at scale. And there isn't a scale any bigger right now than the appetite for cryptocurrency trades. And so the worst case scenario would be is we approve it all. Everyone come in and start buying things on Thursday and the whole thing falls over. You remember some of those times when they were converting
maybe
to the
that's
digital.
Exactly what Gensler wants to happen. don't.
Yeah, and then he'll say, I told you so. But you remember when they first started introducing after hours trading, and this kind of rewinds back to the earlier parts of our lives where we weren't paying attention to this. But as I understand it, as I was told, when the after hours trading started and then hedge funds started and then black box algorithms to do these lightning fast trades and all these things started, there were plenty of hiccups. There were times when there were blackouts for hours at a time and someone's trade got lost and, hiccups and things that just occurred, glitches. You work through it, you figure it out, you have to keep track of everything. It's not like you just snap your fingers and off you go. I mean, even the IRS's website and all these things that launched often had to come down for a bit before they went back up again, right? The surge of traffic. So again, that's why it may be the case they do say yes. I am very dubious that whoever the pundit was who said the next day it's like sell, sell, sell or buy, buy, buy. I really think this is going to be this slow roll into the end of the first quarter. And then again, let's not forget something else I was just talking with someone over the weekend coming out of the holidays is all of a sudden you got this like really active GOP caucus going on. You got DeSantis and Haley. You have all these pending court decisions about eligibility of Trump on ballots, a confusing presidential election cycle year with all kinds of other weird levers that could be pulled by people who aren't really even in charge of the political process. So I guess my sort of thought process is, if we live in a world where in 2024, there are a whole bunch of people and institutions and entities that could pull levers that would either throw monkey wrenches into the gears or speed up or slow down or do something to the political election cycle in the United States, then I have to believe that a lot of levers can be pulled to monkey with this new economic product cycle, because it's not like this is not the first we've heard about it. We've been talking about this for years. And so they're not going to just jump in when they're not ready to go. So I think more FUD is headed our way through this week and the next couple of months.
Well, I got one other topic, and then we can wrap it up maybe with some final predictions here. But the other one that I sent you that caught my attention was this this money moved to a known Satoshi wallet, and a lot of FUD around why that is the case. I don't know if you went down this rabbit hole or not, but I did find it pretty interesting that this known Satoshi wallet that's been dormant has once again resurfaced. And we've heard this narrative before a couple times, but again, the timing of it seemed interesting.
And the part of the timing, yeah, and just so people understand, so Satoshi Nakamoto is the author of the Bitcoin white paper, the creator of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, just turned
10?
12 years old? 10? No, it was 12, I think, on January 2nd or 3rd. A little pump in there as well, but the birthdays kind of come and go. But there was something that was called the Genesis wallet, because in order for Satoshi Nakamoto or whomever that is to create Bitcoin in the blockchain, to have a first wallet from which to do transactions, this first wallet, this Genesis wallet, was instantiated. Genesis, like, the book of the Bible. So what is interesting, I think, for our listeners is it lies dormant, right? Because nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. But surprise, apparently not only was $1.2 million transferred to it, but it seems apparently that maybe CZ, the currently arrested and founder of Binance, was somehow involved, because they're saying there's traces back to an original Binance wallet. So now the question is that a play to connect to? I almost look at it like if I'm someone like CZ or someone at Binance who's run an exchange who has, billions of dollars flying around in the world wide web of crypto, then, and I have a story that I want to steer into, a narrative that I am somehow more closely aligned with Satoshi Nakamoto than anybody thinks, then yeah, I might put a 1.2 million bucks in a dead wallet just to make it seem like I know what I'm talking about. I don't know. There's like these moves that are being made are the kinds of moves that to me just signal again, like the DOJ, we have all this Bitcoin. Look at Satoshi's wallets waking up. Maybe he's a real person. This and this and this and that. There's just so many stories that are noise taking us away from this real signal, which is everyone is waiting, wringing their hands, presumably loading up on Bitcoin. Price is going up, waiting for these ETFs. And if you're the government just watching it, you're just watching all that value, all that money. Every minute that goes by, the DOJ's holdings get more impressive. And then as soon as it gets to that number where they're like, maybe 7 billion is the number we need to sell at, bam! And then there's a huge flash crash. My prediction, I think we're going to see another crash. All these big numbers flying around. I mean, it just feels like people are blowing smoke up all of our dresses and trying to make us think that we're dancing at a club. And I just think we're about to get mugged and put in jail.
You have brought me back down to earth in a good way, I think, because even as I'm thinking through this obfuscated narrative, even as I've jumped around in my own, you can tell I think I'm still coming out of that post-holiday fog and trying to get my bearings here in January. We'll see how the rest of this week pans out. Either way, we will have an interesting episode as we head into next week. Either one way or another, either this thing is happening or it's kicking the can down, and there will be a market correction to talk about. In the meantime, get your mouse ready to click and buy for that Apple Vision Pro pre-order, and we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, man, listen, so good talking to you. Happy New Year. Get your mouse ready to click and buy for this order of the Vision Pro goggles, because for future orders, you won't need your mouse to click anymore.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time for more news and all things crypto and Web3.